Am I audible, Taruna madam?
Yes, sir.
Ma'am, actually this PPT is not running from my side. I need assistance, I think. I'm pressing enter button, but it's not coming to the next slide.
No problem, sir. One moment. Now try presenting, sir.
Sure. Yes. Good evening, everyone. I request everyone to listen to this.
Actor writer, a short story, and a long short story, and a novel. So I do all that, and I'm going to do it as we progress. So I shall not dwell too much here. So we'll go to the next slide. As we are talking of O. Henry, and
Don't you feel elated when you hear this voice? Again, this sharing has been stopped. Again, this sharing has been stopped. I'm really sorry for this glitch.
Sir, I'll present it for you.
Yeah, please do that.
Taruna ma'am, please go ahead.
Yeah, the second slide, please. Yes. So we feel elated whenever we hear this voice, the video I just played, right? Ecstatic and enchanting, who has encouraged and inspired many generations. Yes, she is our own Srimati Raseshwari Chonkar Madam. Madam has already graced Team Elle's platform on 22nd July and has come to bless this August gathering today. The topic of enlightenment is small towns and rivers. Next slides, please. The next one, please. She is an eminent member, English Language Committee, Bal Bharati, well-educated, eligible, and enthusiast, who has eloquently educated her students effortlessly on various subjects, including personality development. Efficient with her ideas, electric with her sound notes, an excellent speaker who is exhaustive when she covers any idea or topic, empathetic when she listens, empirical when she understands the problems. Her areas of interest are rooted deeply in concerns of English language, who is a voracious reader with a great interest in Indian culture. Madam, we are very happy to have you here again on our Team Elle's platform. Over to you, madam. Thank you.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, do I begin? I cannot see myself, so okay, thank you. Yeah, I'll just at the outset, I would just like to say a few things before I actually begin. I have a confession to make that I chose this poem when Sunil Patil sir told me to choose a topic. And I wasn't, I knew that I was getting into something really complex. But I thought if I don't challenge myself at this stage of my life, when should I? When can I? That is why I picked up this poem. I picked it up because when I read it, I was just blown over. At first reading, I could totally relate to the poem at the surface level. I could relate to the poem. I could understand the sentences, the phrases, the river has a soul. I could relate to it as an Indian. I could relate to it as a Hindu. And then I felt I have to delve deeper and find out what is there in this poem. Now that was a very rather a tough journey, I must say. It's not been easy. I have realized that we know little about the Northeast, even those of us who have more exposure to that part of India. Even then, there is so much that we need to know. And I'm glad that this is there. This poem is there in the 12th standard book. But I also feel that when we deal with it at the 12th standard level, it will be in a different way. And if we were to study it at the degree college level, when we are hardcore literature teachers, I think it would be a completely different way in which we would deal with it. I have still tried to do as much justice as I can, but I'm still not very happy with it. There is so much to the poem. See, this is the skill of a great writer, a great poet, that she has said so much in just a few stanzas. So let's try to explore the world of the Northeast, and a very, very strong and powerful modern voice from there, Mamang Dai. Can we go to the second slide, please? Yeah. Now I've just put up a little, a small map of the Northeast, because I thought that somewhere, we club South Indians together, we club North Indians together, we say Northeast, and we don't really understand that there is so much subtle as well as there are so many subtle as well as big differences, among all of them. I know that, people from Uttar Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Uttaranchal, Bihar get very offended when we say they are Hindi speaking, because there are so many languages spoken in that area. Hindi, the pure Hindi that we understand, is actually spoken in a very small part of India. The others are Maithili and Braj Bhasha and so many others. And we club identities together. I have known during my college days friends who were very offended when I said, "Oh, you're a South Indian." And it was an education for me. I learned very early that you can't call somebody who comes from maybe Tamil Nadu a South Indian. She will say, "I'm a Tamilian. So I'm a Malayali." And there is so much we don't know about our own country. So I'm glad that a poem from the Northeast figures here, and such a beautiful poem too. Now, if I have to introduce this in a class, there are wonderful icebreakers in the textbook too. I just thought, let me just have a few more. Teachers can maybe use them or make their own. What is special about the Northeast of India? I think in the last few years, we know a little bit more. And I remember this little clip from Chak De India, in which a few girls from the Northeast come to play hockey. And the manager there looks up and he says, "Where are you from?" He doesn't think they are Indian. See, there is a racial difference. But at the same time, I'm going to show how in so many ways we are connected, not just geographically, but historically, language-wise, culturally, we are very, very deeply bound. It may not be apparent on the surface, but in so many ways, we are very, very deeply bound to each other. So I thought it's a good thing that we are hearing a voice from the Northeast. So questions like, what is special about the Northeast of India? Have you been there? Nowadays, people are traveling a lot. And I know many people who've traveled to what they call the Seven Sisters. And people discuss the beauty of that place. And many of us are perhaps planning to go there. So, we all know about the beauty of that place. And especially since it is rather untouched as yet by modern civilization, ugly constructions. Highways are a good thing, no doubt. But along with it, when modern constructions come, too much of tourism can spoil a place. I think we'll move to the next slide. Before we move to the next slide, I would like to show you all one video with a very, very beautiful song, which all of us know. I think it'll take us nicely into the poem.
Oh no. कभी शाम बहे कभी रुद्र पल पल एक नया चित्र ओ जिंदगी के सखा यूं ही बहना तू है सृष्टि ब्रह्मा तेरे पिता नामो ब्रह्मपुत्र नमामि ब्रह्मपुत्र तेरी लहरों में पिता की बाहें मिले
तेरी बूंदों से फसलों के मोटे खिले
सदियों से तेरे किनारे जीवन का है खजाना तू बहना यूं ही बहना ये धरती सजल कर बहना तू देश के कंधे का है नीला दुशाला नाम ब्रह्मपुत्र नमामि ब्रह्मपुत्र
Okay, thank you. Can we go to the next slide, please? I think that has created the right mood for this very, very beautiful poem by Mamang Dai. Now, we must know a little bit about her, and why I played that song was because she is born in Pasighat, beside the East Siang, the Siang River. Now, the Siang is actually the Brahmaputra. It is called the Siang when it flows through Arunachal Pradesh, this part of Arunachal Pradesh. So I thought, let us pay this beautiful tribute to the Brahmaputra and then move forward. Now, Mamang Dai was born in Pasighat in Arunachal Pradesh. She's today 63. She belongs to the Adi tribe, but she has got a very, very modern education. Her father was in the government service, and she was educated, as I have shown in the PPT, which I shall not repeat, in good schools, modern schools rather. I don't know whether they are good or not. And she studied English literature and then went on to become an IAS officer and then promptly left the job. I think her soul was calling her elsewhere, and she is a seeker. She has deep roots in her land and in her culture, and just a very smart, polished education was not enough for her. So she decided to give up the bureaucracy, which was actually, which is such a comfortable place to be in, not always, but most of the times. And then she became a journalist. She worked with the Telegraph, the Hindustan Times. Now she heads many organizations in Arunachal Pradesh. She is in fact the first IAS officer. She has many firsts to her credit. She is a very, very strong and powerful voice of Arunachal Pradesh. And actually, we all are, we know about Assam, a little bit about Meghalaya, Nagaland, but we know very little about Arunachal Pradesh. That is why she wrote a book, Arunachal Pradesh, The Hidden Land, and for which she got the Sahitya Academy Award. She has also written a novel called Black Hill, which I speed read because I was to speak about her. It is a semi-historical novel. It follows the life of a French priest who traveled to India, and he wanted to get into Tibet, which was very difficult then. I think it is today too. And it's a very beautiful novel. It shows the concerns and the themes that are repetitive in all her works. She wrote the river poems in 2004. And the poem which we are going to look at closely today, Small Towns and Rivers, is one of the poems from her river poems. Now, mountains, rivers, valleys, gorges, the beautiful landscapes of Arunachal Pradesh and nature play a very, very important role in all her works, whether she's writing poetry or prose or novels, or whether she's writing a journalistic piece. These are her very deep concerns. And because she has such a wonderful skill as a writer, because she is so deeply rooted in her culture and trying to know more about it, she has tried to become a voice of the tribe to which she belongs, the Adi tribe. Now, there are many, many tribes in the Northeast. Even in Pasighat, there are about 6 to 7 tribes. There has been internal rivalry between them. They are similar in many ways. They are very different in many ways. And, they have moved from place to place because of natural calamities, etc., from time to time. And they have tried to protect themselves. There have been intense rivalries. And in recent times, because of the insurgency problems, because of the internal rivalries between the tribes, because of their problems with the government, their confusion about whether to assimilate or to remain isolated. All these are very, very complex problems which we cannot easily address at one go. In fact, when I started studying for this poem, I found that I had bitten off more than I could chew. Because in just 6 or 7 stanzas, she is talking about the history of her tribe and her state. She is talking about the race memory. She is talking about their connection with nature. She's talking about destruction of nature. There are so many themes which she is handling. I thought because she is such a strong voice, you should also hear her actual voice. So I know it's just a 2-minute clip. It is not a very comprehensive clip, but I still thought that we should hear her so that we can understand who she is. And her voice will definitely tell us a lot about her. Can we have the clip, the video, please?
Well, this is actually a very big book with pictures. I don't know why it became such a big book, because it was actually based on a lot of travel notes which I had taken, in my travels through my own state. But somehow when we went into publication, I also had a lot of photos, and I wanted it to be a kind of pictorial edition as well, to bring out the landscape, the mountains, the people especially. And the book it kind of expanded, and it became this rather big book called Arunachal Pradesh, The Hidden Land. Although now I think everyone is of the opinion that it's not so hidden. We are the kind of sentinel at the frontier, and we come into the news ever so often, regarding territory, etc., and disputed lines. But it was my attempt to bring into focus, even for myself, just an attempt to record and to document life in the hills. And also it's a collection of a lot of our traditional mythology and religious and spiritual beliefs. No, my schooling was in Shillong. I was in boarding school for right from the beginning till we went into college. Of course, because my father was posted in different parts of Arunachal, we had this upbringing where we...
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Taruna ma'am. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm also now, you can go to the next slide, but I'm going to just say a little more about Mamang Dai. You can go to the next slide, ma'am. Thank you.
I'd like to invite
just let this be now.
speaker
I'm just
this
going to
morning,
read
Ms. Mamang Dai, who's come here all the way from Itanagar, Arunachal Pradesh.
another
I'd just
video
like to
started by
introduce her.
mistake. Okay, after having heard her, I think we realize that she has this wonderful soft-spoken tone. And I'm not just talking about her physical voice, but otherwise also, if you read her work, she may be describing or discussing something very intense, something deep, something which is laced with a lot of anguish, yet her tone remains very even, very soft, very empathetic. And she says, she describes herself as a member of a tribe of 10,000 messengers carrying the whispers of the world. I think this is so beautiful. It just shows the poet inside her when she uses this line that she carries the whispers of the world. Dai's poetry does not arrive at any definite conclusions. She's a seeker, she's a thinker, something like a philosopher, because philosophers ask more questions than they have answers. And she's asking lots of questions, even in this poem. That's why any of us who are trying to arrive at very definite answers are going to find it difficult, because she's not giving any definite answers. And she's, through the poems, her poems, she is very uneasy about the erased histories, which many of us are now uneasy about the uncertain future, and especially for the tribes. You see, their dilemma is whether they are going to assimilate and then lose themselves, or whether they keep themselves isolated and then perhaps forego the benefits of modern civilization. There is something called the Warrior Elvin and Nehru Pact just after independence. And I think they decided to leave the Northeast alone because they felt that they should remain untouched, and we should not interfere in their lives, their ethos, their lifestyles unnecessarily. Now, this is a double-edged sword. You don't know what is going to come out of it. Now, what was the result of it, though the motives were very noble, was that that part of India remained neglected for a very, very long time. Now, of course, it's getting a lot of attention, as it rightfully should. I will just read out a little bit of, the book that I read, and I just loved some small passages from what she wrote. And I also found that they were connected with what we are going to do. So I just wrote it down. I just noted them. Her mother, fussing around the house, barely glanced at her, but seemed to be aware of what was going on in her daughter's head. Lazy, she said. What kind of magic are you expecting by doing this? She lifted the book and shook it in Gimur's face. What are these things? Words? What are words? She cried. Speak the words you mean and say no more. Go out and work. See how the leaves and shoots grow. Do they speak words or make a sound? No. If you work, you will have no time for this idleness, wasting time with these white dead leaves. White dead leaves are books. And her mother, who the character's mother, Gimur is the character. Now her mother feels she is wasting her time with these white dead leaves. See, they have a very strong oral tradition, the way we had, and the way many of the ancient civilizations have had, even Greeks. Remember, Socrates used the dialectic method where he used to ask a question and he would get an answer. Now, the same applies to India. The transfer of knowledge was done from generation to generation orally. And there was a lot of stress on the way you mouthed the words, your diction, intonation, and there was an intimacy to those traditions. They also, therefore, laid a lot of stress on what, memory, remembering. They felt that if we give up remembering, then we will lose our memories. That's how these oral traditions went from one generation to another. I shall also read another small para. Gimur was infuriated by her mother's sharp words. Poor woman, what did she know about the human heart? What did she know about words and books? She had aged rapidly after her husband's death and had become bitter. Now, Gimur is a 17-year-old girl, and at that age, obviously doesn't take her mother seriously. She doesn't understand that her mother is so steeped in her past and that there is a wisdom in her words which her 17-year-old heart cannot understand. Now, I'll read another part. We are afraid, he told her, because we don't travel. See, the tribes were very, very protective of themselves, their traditions, their rituals. They did not even travel to a short distance away where they knew other tribes existed. And there is this character in the book who tells this girl Gimur that we are afraid because we don't travel. I thought that was also very interesting. On a moonlit night, his father had stood with him on a high mountain, looking at the river, and said, "It is the silver vein that embraces us all. It goes everywhere." Now, the silver vein is the river. And, the entire Northeast, including Bengal, has so many rivers and tributaries all over the place. And it is a riverine civilization. Now, most civilizations of the world have been built, obviously, for very obvious reasons, next to rivers, on the banks of rivers. And even Indus Valley civilization was near a river. Most ancient, all in fact, I think, civilizations were built on the banks of rivers for obvious reasons, because water is so important to human life. In fact, water in Hindi and Sanskrit and most of Indian languages is also called Jivan. Jivan is water. Life is water. The river is water. Now, I'll read some more. Life was a tumbling race of moments like a swing, up one way, then suddenly down another before it suddenly ended. And this we are going to look at later on, that life is a series of moments. At least human life is a series of moments because we are unclear about what happens later. But most of all, Gimur knew this from the words of the shaman who told them that in every life there is a turning point when suddenly the records of past deeds, all words, thoughts, and dreams, and everything else that moved a person along a certain path, all of these would one day be placed before them. This is time standing still, the moment of choice. Now, this is a beautiful line. I think all of us have experienced this moment when suddenly your entire past comes home to roost and we are forced to make a choice. If you have not encountered this moment, maybe you will. This can happen not once, it can happen quite a few times in our lives when we are forced to make a choice. I'll read another small poem from the river poems. It's called Birthplace. And you can see how the poems are connected. We can also see how Mamang Dai's concerns reverberate through each of her poems. The poem is called Birthplace, which is also from the river poems. We are the children of the rain, of the cloud woman, brother to the stone and bat. In our cradle of bamboo and vine, in our long houses we slept, and when morning came, we were refreshed. There were no strangers in our valley. Recognition was instant as clan by clan we grew, and destiny was simple like a green shoot, following direction like the sun and moon. Look at the beautiful simile. Destiny was like a green shoot. The first drop of water gave birth to man, from red sheath to green stern, and the spreading wind. We descend from solitude and miracles. You know, her analogies have this stunning value. You know, we are stunned when we hear her analogies and her comparisons, because there is so much depth to them. And the connections that she makes are also, you know, they have that suddenness and that surprise element, which leaves us thinking, which is perhaps what she wants us to do. Okay. Before we actually go to the poem, I want to also compare this poem with what we have learned, perhaps in school or at other times. We have studied lots of poems on rivers. We have, obviously, if we have studied through the medium of English, we have studied poems on the river or on water in English. And there is one which I remember studying as a little child, and the last two lines I always use because I love them. So I'll just read that poem, Alfred Lord Tennyson's The Brook. I come from haunts of coot and hern, I make a sudden sally, and sparkle out among the fern to bicker down a valley. By 30 hills I hurry down, or slip between the ridges, by 20 thorps a little town, and 100 bridges. Till last by Philip's farm I flow, to join the brimming river, for men may come and men may go, but I go on forever. Now, this last two lines have an echo in Mamang Dai's poems. And the poem, Small Towns and the Rivers, that we are going to study today, also echoes this line that rivers go on forever. Give me a minute, please. Okay, let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, now, when we study a poem, I think reading it first loudly is very, very important. The teacher can read or can make one of the better readers in the class read. But reading the poem as an entirety first, I think is important. So I shall just read the poem that we are going to look at today. Small Towns and Rivers. Small towns always remind me of death. My hometown lies calmly amidst the trees. It is always the same, in summer or winter, with the dust flying or the wind howling down the gorge. Just the other day, someone died. In the dreadful silence, we wept, looking at the sad wreath of tuberoses. Life and death, life and death. Only the rituals are permanent. The river has a soul. In the summer, it cuts through the land like a torrent of grief. Sometimes I think it holds its breath, seeking a land of fish and stars. The river has a soul. It knows, stretching past the town, from the first drop of rain to dry earth and mist on the mountain tops. The river knows the immortality of water. A shrine of happy pictures marks the days of childhood. Small towns grow with anxiety for the future. The dead are placed pointing west, When the soul rises, it will walk into the golden east, into the house of the sun. In the cool bamboo restored in sunlight, life matters like this. In small towns by the river, we all want to walk with the gods. Now, after finishing reading the poem loudly, I think especially for a poem like this, it is important that we ask the students to look at it once again, silently, meditatively. So give them 5 minutes once again and let them read it. Ask them questions and see what their responses are. Now, after the students finish reading the poem silently, you could ask them, what are the questions that arise in your mind on the first reading of the poem? Now, a poem like this, written in simple language on the surface, but having so much meaning underneath, the children are not going to immediately understand, but I think they will definitely be able to relate to the poem in some way or the other. So you can ask them, what are the questions that arise in your mind on the first reading of the poem? Is there something that shocks you? Does the poem reveal its soul immediately? Or do you have to work hard at trying to find out what the poet is saying? This will at least make the students think. And a good poem is going to not only touch the head and the brain, but the heart too. It has to touch both. It has to make them feel, it has to make them think. And if you can get them into that mood, that reflective mood, that empathizing mood, then perhaps they are going to glean more meaning from the poem than they would otherwise. Can we have the next slide, please? Now I am going to go verse by verse because I thought that is the best way to tackle the poem. This is the way we do go through a poem traditionally in the class. I don't know how you all are going to answer questions if I ask you some. Can people unmute themselves? Organizers, can people unmute themselves and answer?
Yes, madam, they can raise their hands and we can allow them to unmute.
Okay. I mean, just give them the freedom to unmute because in the chat box, I can't always see what's happening, So if they unmute themselves.
Unmute the people also.
Yeah. So now the first line, small towns always remind me of death. What is it about this line? Can somebody answer what this line is saying? And what does it remind you of, perhaps?
Participant teachers, you are requested to raise your hands. Yeah.
I will, of course, share with you what occurred to me when I read that line for the first time. But if anybody wants to answer, you are welcome, please.
Yeah, I can't find Nilofer Rizvi, madam. She has raised. If any course can please find her.
Ma'am, I think it's the natural beauty that dies away. It is urbanization she's talking about.
Okay. Yes, true. Yes, of course. She is, small towns remind me of death. Yes, she's talking. And I have put two pictures in the slide, if you can take a look. One is of an untouched countryside where they do traditionally terrace gardening. And then it's also a similar kind of hill where perhaps traditionally they were doing terrace gardening, where now there is a town. And see the difference between the two pictures. Okay, thank you, ma'am. That was right. But I will also talk about the poetry, not just the content. Small towns remind me of death has this shock value. And I'll tell you what I was reminded of instantly. I had a wonderful teacher teaching me T.S. Eliot, the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock when I was in my SY, long back. And I remember her drawing our attention to this beautiful analogy right at the beginning of the poem. Let us go then, you and I, when the evening is spread out against the sky, like a patient etherized upon a table. Now, for us, most of us who had grown up on wonderful Victorian poetry, Wordsworth, Shelley, Byron, Eliot was something else. And when the sunset, which is one of the most romantic notions in poetry because the sun doesn't set at all, this is a poetic notion. And the sunset has been compared to so many beautiful things. And here, the sunset is compared to a patient who is about to go in for a surgery, and he has been administered ether or chloroform, and he's now unconscious, he or she. And that comparison was shocking. And this is what happened to me when I saw this first line: small towns remind me of death. It has shock value, it provokes you into thinking, and you're wondering, why is the poet using this line? And then you move on to the rest of the poem. My hometown lies calmly amidst the trees. Now she goes on to comparing her hometown, which is perhaps a small village in Pasighat. It is always the same in the summer or winter, with the dust flying or the wind howling down the gorge. Now there is, she talks of a gorge, which is a valley. She talks of the seasons. She talks of dust flying. She talks of the wind howling. She talks of the elements. And she talks of the calm in her native town, native place. And she compares it with newly sprung up small towns. I've been traveling up and down Bombay, Pune, beyond Pune quite often all my life. And, there's this town called Hadapsar just after Pune. And somehow, whenever I have seen that town called Hadapsar and many more like that in India, I have always recoiled at the squalor, the terrible architecture, and the absolute lack of beauty. I'm sure Hadapsar 50 years back was not like this. But what happens when, modern civilization overtakes, destroys what was traditionally there, traditional architecture, the landscape, the beauty, nature. And then, if there is a government or a municipality which is not really in control, then people build just however they want. People who have been perhaps cut off from their own past, so they build, structures which are jutting out in a very ugly manner, invading on each other's space. And that is what she's talking about. Let's go to the next slide, please. Just the other day, someone died. Look at the casualness of that sentence. Just the other day, someone died. She just inserts it as though it's something that happens all the time. But the next sentence tells us that for, if it's somebody who dies in your neighborhood, somebody who dies in the town, somebody who dies elsewhere, it's casual for us. Oh my God, somebody died. And the next moment you're thinking of something else. Remember that line, Jana pada bhara manatila haya hai. So you just forget. And then in the silence of the night, you hear the family weeping. The dreadful silence, we wept. Now, if it is somebody who is close to you, the grief is enormous. Looking at the sad wreath of tube roses, she looks at the dead body, which is covered with a wreath of tube roses. And there's a beautiful transferred epithet there. Looking at the sad wreath of tube roses. I feel that in passing, if we can convey the beauty of a figure of speech to the students, I think it will have more meaning. I know for exam purposes, sometimes we teachers, we all do it. We say, okay, this is a transferred epithet, this is a personification. But if it can be woven in the explanation of the poem, I think the students are going to get more meaning out of it. Looking at the sad wreath of tube roses, life and death, life and death. Now, here, she is not just talking about the destruction of nature through irrational building, but she's talking about the political upheavals in the Northeast. They have been ravaged for decades together by their political movements, violent movements, what we call insurgency. See, it is inter-tribal rivalry. It is also, some kind of upsurge against successive governments and the military, which is there. And because of which life is cheap. There are many deaths from time to time. That is why she begins with, just the other day, someone died. In the dreadful silence, we wept. Dreadful silence, obviously. And, on the hillside, in these remote places, the silence is very eerie. And in that silence, you hear somebody moaning, it will become worse. Life and death, a beautiful repetition, telling us the ephemeralness, the smallness, the transitory nature of life. Only rituals are permanent. Now, among the tribes in the Northeast, rituals play a very, very important role. I'm just reminded by this great mythologist, John Campbell, who talks of how if a society is stripped of all its myths, all its rituals, all its associations with nature, all the symbolic associations with nature, then, life becomes very bare. Life loses its meaning. And the tribals find a lot of meaning in rituals. I don't think it's just the tribals. I think you and I also, we do the puja perhaps in the house and we feel a sense of satisfaction. We do a ritual on some day, festival day. We worship the Saraswati and our books on the Shera, Gudi Padwa, we do, all those things give a sense of meaning to us. You chant something every day and you see how we feel that connection. Now, the word, the name Pasighat itself, which is from where she hails, Mamang Dai, the word ghat is so common all over India. Okay, and you can see that though we think of them as racially different from us, see how we are connected through language, through our ethos. From the poems that I read, one of them which I read out to you, and the others which I read when I was studying river poems that British poets, American poets have written, they value the river. No doubt they value water, they value the river. But in India and in the East, we revere the river. And I think the tribals go one step ahead. They think of the river as something as alive as a human being. They think of nature as alive, which is, the pantheon cult, which even Wordsworth followed. They believe that the rocks, the trees, we know that trees have life, but the rocks and mountains and rivers also are alive. Let's go to the next slide, please. I don't want to exceed my time. Yeah, the river has a soul. That's what I was saying just now. And for an Indian to understand that the river has a soul is not something, that we will not understand. The river has a soul. In the summer, it cuts through the land like a torrent of grief. See the simile here. And I've put a picture of a torrent. Sometimes I think it holds its breath. That beautiful repetition of sometimes. Because she thinks that this is what the river would perhaps do. Because if the river feels, because maybe it is polluted, maybe because there is a dam put across, and the way the climate is changing in the world, I just read this morning that a dam, a very strong dam, was put across a river in South America, and then the river only changed its course. So you see, even if we try to control nature, it's not all that easy. I think it holds its breath, seeking a land of fish and stars. Maybe she's talking about how, because the rivers are polluted, we don't see the reflection of the stars, or there are less fish. Or she's talking of the mythical river of the past. In the summer, it cuts through the land like a torrent of grief. See the word cuts. It is connected with how grief can cut your heart. And she's still talking about what we saw in the previous verse, the deaths that happen. Let's go to the next verse, please. The river has a soul, she repeats again. It knows. That means the river is as alive, is as conscious as you and I, stretching past the town from the first drop of rain to dry earth and mist on the mountaintops. She's talking about water and how water is always there. Water is immortal in some form or the other. It rises up as steam, becomes water vapor, then comes down again as rain, and water is immortal in comparison with human life, perhaps alive in the form of a soul, but the body dies. Let's go to the next verse, please. A shrine of happy pictures marks the day of childhood. Small towns grow with anxiety for the future. Now, a shrine of happy pictures, she is remembering memories of her childhood, which were idyllic. She's 63 today. And if she has been to her native place time and again in her childhood, I'm sure she remembers joining the pageantry, which is so common all over India and very much so among the tribal cultures, the color, the pageantry, the songs and the dance in the shrines which they worship, and the life which was simpler then. And when you move to a town, you leave a part of yourself behind. If you see, even in Mumbai, if it is a first generation which has come, migrated to Mumbai, and you see how they try to keep up with their roots. So they might have a bhajan in their own area because they want to connect with their roots. And there is always that longing that once I retire, I'm going to go back to my village, which many of them do. Some of them can't go. Remember the movie Gaman? Seene mein jalan, aankhon mein tufan sa kyun hai? You leave your village and your soul you leave behind, your heart you leave behind. So small towns grow with anxiety for the future. What is going to happen? Are we going to be totally cut off from our roots? Are we going to destroy nature? Okay, the dead are placed pointing west. Now she's talking about the ritual of the dead. I read a lot about the death rituals, and I find that among the tribes of Arunachal Pradesh, and there are so many, there are different types of rituals, and they are also similar in many ways. Now she talks of the dead which is placed pointing west, where the head is towards the west, and when the soul rises, it will walk to the golden east. So the dead is placed pointing west because the soul should walk into the golden east, into the setting sun. Only then that soul will perhaps go where it wants to go. We call it moksha, they call it something else perhaps. Let's go to the next slide. Now the last verse, in the cool of bamboo, restored in sunlight, and I have put a picture of the bamboo huts, traditional huts in Arunachal and Pasighat. And you can see how the sunlight is coming into the veranda. This is a veranda. In small towns and by the river, we all want to walk with the gods. And you can see young boys and girls from the Adi tribe, which Mamang Dai belongs to. And she ends in this last verse on an optimistic note. She ends by saying that in the cool of bamboo restored in sunlight, which is her memory of her childhood home, in small towns and by the river, we all want to walk with the gods. So that memory which she has of walking with the gods. And you know, they believe, and what I've read in that book, Black Hill, they believe that just beyond their tribal community in the woods, in the forests, the spirits are very much there. They are alive. And they are also scared to go there in the night. There are legends that people have been harmed if they traveled in the woods in the night. And the cocoon offered by the tribal community, this is the memory of her childhood, which she talks of. And if you listen to Mamang Dai's speeches, you will realize that she's talking of reviving her past, reviving the traditions, and institutionalizing their religion, their culture, so that they need not lose it to modernization and modern civilization. I will stop. And if at all you all have questions, I will try to answer them. If there is somebody else who can throw more light, because I still don't know whether I've done justice to the poem. There is so much to it. And if there's anybody else who can answer, they are also most welcome. If I can't answer, I shall say I don't have the answer. But you all are welcome to asking a question. Thank you so much. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. There is a slide where I've just written about the references. The appreciation of the poem. This is what perhaps you can use. And the next slide is the references, which I glanced through, which I read. And thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any questions?
Teachers to raise their queries, they can raise their hands, and even they can write in the chat box also. Please don't start thanking Madam right now. Let the questions come first.
I am aware that this poem has been cancelled for this year. Yes. I knew, but I thought it's still a beautiful poem, and there is no harm in us, reading it and understanding it.
This is not there for this year only, for the year.
I know.
Yes, madam.
So sir, excuse me.
Yes.
Dhanopar and Milin Badguja sir, they have raised their hands.
Please, let them allow.
Please unmute yourself, sir.
Yeah, before we go to them, I would like to let you know, madam, as we are live on Facebook also, we have got responses from Somnath Bore, Ruchir Shirvatkar, Mohan Kade, Joyce Wilson, Yusuf Muhammad, Asim Chitre, Apeksha Thikekar. And there is one question: what does torrent of grief mean by Anant Ramchandran Ghorpade?
Yeah, torrent of grief over here is obviously, it's a simile comparing the tremendous grief, perhaps in the first few moments, which you feel, and you cannot remain in control of yourselves. So those, and I've read somewhere that, when you lose somebody very close to you, those first few hours are terrible. And slowly you come to grips. It may take days, it may take months, and it may take years also. But that first torrent, waterfall of grief that comes, it is a terrible pain. And that's what she talks of, the deaths that happen due to this, because of the violence that is there in the region for various reasons, which I touched upon when I was done.
We all walk with the gods is related to nature.
Yeah, I didn't hear that, please.
We all want to walk with the gods is related with religion or nature. Dr. Uday wants to know it.
I think both, because they are intertwined. See, for them, and I think for us also, don't we worship the river and the skies? And I think we worship also all aspects of nature. And
Hello,
don't
ma'am.
we say Ganga Mai and we say Ganga Ji? And can you imagine going to Pandharpur and not taking a dip in the Chandrabhaga, or going to Alandi and not taking a dip in the Indrayani? So we also connect rivers and mountains and landscapes. So yes, I think it's both.
Yeah. Yeah, those who have been unmuted, would you like to post your query? Okay, the next question is from again Facebook. Somnath Bore wants to know what is the meaning of immortality of water?
I mean, if you look at it in a very, very basic way also, don't you think water is immortal? It becomes steam, water vapor, it rises up, then it is stored in the clouds, comes down in the form of rain, and wherever it falls, again it evaporates. I think so. That's what she means. And of course, so there is a deeper meaning whereby she says that the water, rivers have a soul.
Hello, ma'am.
That they also think and feel. Yeah.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes.
In this poem, there is one expression, the dead are placed pointing west. What does it mean exactly?
See, this is the ritual she refers to. Like we all have death rituals. Everywhere, every community has death rituals. See, I'm a Maharashtrian, and I know that even among Maharashtrians, every community has slightly different ways in which, they perform the funeral rites of the dead. So among the Adi tribe to which she belongs, this is how they place the dead body, facing east, because they believe that the soul should attain whatever they call it. We say Sadgati, so if it points to the east, then if it faces east, the soul will walk up and go towards the east. That is what I think she's referring to, death rituals of her community.
Dr. Gajanan Malokar, please shoot your query.
Okay. Hello, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
This is an extremely difficult poem
yes, sir.
For various interpretations, because students are going to ask us so many questions.
Yes.
The first question will be, why do small times remind the poet of death? Then, what is the meaning of seeking a land of fish and stars?
Yes.
Even at the end of the poem, we all want to walk with the gods.
Yes.
So actually, I have not worked out very much, but it is my personal opinion that the poem has nothing to do with urbanization. That is the destruction caused by the urbanization, because there is no support from the text to interpret in this manner.
Okay.
Of course, these are my personal we can say interpretations.
Right. Yeah.
What I feel is that just like Wordsworth presents cool and calm aspect of nature. For Wordsworth, nature is always benevolent, guide, etc., etc. On the other hand, Shelley presents stormy aspect of nature. So here I feel that she is presenting the ferocious aspect of nature.
Yes.
You see, in the very first line, the small towns always remind me to death. So we have to work out, why does the town remind her of death? My hometown lives calmly amidst the streets. Here, calmly is a very deceptive word.
Yes.
Because in the next line, say it is always the same. Means there is no activity, nothing else. You have compared the poem with Proof Rock. Perhaps we can come.
Yeah, thank you.
No, his voice is lost. He was saying something more.
Okay. Okay, the next question is from Facebook, I think, again. Sunil Patil sir, please help me if there are questions from Zoom Meet. I'm reading this FB again. What do you mean by immortal? Here that is done. Why does the poetess compare the house with shrine? Shrine. House is compared with shrine.
Where is that exactly? I'll just.
I also don't know, madam. The question has come. Okay.
No, I'll check because I have it in front of me. Where is it? Where is it being compared with a shrine?
Okay, we'll come to that question later. The question is, what is the message that is conveyed in the poem by the poet?
I don't think there is any clear message. I think I said in the beginning that she's also seeking, and I think that it is good that we don't have ready-made answers for everything. Leave it to the imagination of the student, leave it to the imagination of the teacher. And as Dr. Malokar said, I agree that there are so many ways. Like, I also thought that there were two ways of looking at it. One is she's talking about the insurgency and death because of that. And then I also thought, because she is so deeply attached to nature through all her works, I thought it is also about how small towns destroy and destruct nature.
Yes, let us take the last question. Yeah.
Can I speak, ma'am?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I think the theme is something related to the destruction caused by the ferocious aspect of nature. Particularly in the third stanza, the river has a soul. In the summer, it cuts through the land like a torrent of grief. What happens in plain? It is the rainy season that causes flood. But in Himalayan ranges, it is the melting of the ice that causes sudden flood. And because of that sudden flood, even people don't have time to protect themselves, and the life is lost.
Yes.
And that is something. But you see in the first stanza, she says that it always remind me of death. In the second stanza, she actually remembers the death. Someone is dead, looking at the sad wreath, etc., etc. Then she speaks about the ferocity of the rivers, etc., etc. And one minute, what is the message? In spite of the ferocity of nature, destruction caused by the nature, life goes on, and we have to move. Perhaps that is the message of the poem.
That is very true. And I think I mentioned that because of natural calamities and all, the tribes have to face a lot of problems. But when I heard her speeches and all, and I saw the various things that she touched upon, I realized that she speaks of so many concerns through her writings. It is not just about the natural calamities. And because, see, she has not been brought up in her native place. Yes. She went to school in Shillong. So she is as urban as us, so that she refers only to natural calamities, I thought, is limiting the meaning. I think she means lots of things. But we can look at it like that also. If we keep it simple for the sake of students, perhaps it will help, because it's going to be difficult to deal with otherwise.
Thank you, madam. Good evening, everyone. The essence of all beautiful art is gratitude. I feel honored to be given a chance to express Team Ellie's gratitude. As Mamam Dai has aptly framed the line, the river has a soul, I think Raseshwari madam's lucidity of language and effortless flow of words is like a river. The river which is soul of English language teaching. Thank you, madam, for such a wonderful session and a sojourn to Southeast. Emily would also like to thank the eminent keynote speakers who have graced today's session. Mr. Anil Bagre, Mr. Avinash Rade, Dr. Suhasini Zadav, Praveen Mure sir, Shailaja Mure madam, Dr. Shubhra Roy, Dr. Gajanan Malokar, Dr. Deepak Damodare, Dr. Lagbir Kaur Verma madam, Jayashree Jangle madam, Manjula Beer madam. I hope I have taken all the names. Please excuse me if I have left any name unspoken. And all other teachers and students across Maharashtra on Zoom and Facebook Live, even those who will hit either of the pages. I personally would like to thank Team Ellie for nice teamwork they are doing, and yes, our technical head Taruna madam for helping me with my presentations today, along with all the beautiful flyers and the help to the keynote speakers. Thank you. Over to you, Mr.
I would also like to just add thank you to the mentors, Bagre sir and Rade sir, and all my BOS colleagues, participants, Dr. Malokar, Dr. Shailaja Mule ma'am, and all the other participants. I don't know whether I could do justice to this very tough poem, but I have attempted and I am feeling happy that I attempted. Thank you so much. Thank
You
you.
did.
Thank you.
No certificates needed.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Sachin sir. After this insightful and expressive webinar that really opened up myriad angles of perspective to facilitate this poem. Now, I'll announce tomorrow's webinar, and it will be conducted by a critic who has proved his abilities and talent to produce innovative and experimentative ideas. Mr. Avinash Rade sir, and sir will be dealing with the poem Father Returning Home. So see you tomorrow, same time, same platform. Till then, goodbye from Team Elle. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.